citizens to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker cards for anything not on the agenda. For those that don't know, we have a process where you fill out a speaker card if you want to speak. And so we'll move on to item 1. And we're honored to have Michelle Gaston Brown and Mark Hamilton. Michelle works for the Nashville Chamber. Mark is a Franklin resident, and y'all just sit up here if you like. He says he's a reformed politician, former elected official in Georgia, and we asked him specifically to come give this report, and I hope you'll kind of explain what this really means. This isn't necessarily, it's the whole region, so that's why it's important for us to look at it. So the floor is yours.
Good evening. I am Michelle Gaston Brown, Vice President of Policy for the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for giving us 10-15 minutes of your time to present to you our 2017 Vital Signs handout. This is a handout that the Chamber works on in consultation with the Metropolitan Planning Organization every year to present. It pretty much gives a thumbprint of where the Nashville region is with the 10 counties in terms of moving forward. It's a quick examination of education, population, affordability, health, just anything going on in our area that is vital to help us move forward. Transit, obviously. And so we are just excited to present this to you. Our lead researcher, Garrett Harper, was unable to be here. So if you have any specific data-driven questions, I'll make note of those and get that information back to you as soon as possible.
And how many years have we been doing this now?
This is our 5th year doing it.
Yeah, and every year the Mayor's Caucus, 40 mayors from the entire region, are the first to hear the report and kind of understand what's happening in the region, just for a little clarification. So, excuse me.
Yes, and every year we do a handout. In the off year, the odd number years, we do a smaller pamphlet such as this, and then next year we'll do the 50-page rollout. But we found in the research in the course of a year, some things don't change. So we didn't want to, we wanted to be, you know, environmentally friendly and save some paper. So now Mark Hamilton is going to present Vital Signs to you.
Great, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I retired from the Georgia House of Representatives 2.5 years ago and moved here. My wife and I moved to Franklin, Tennessee, and we just love it here. So I just want to put that plug in there. Love it, and one of the first things I did was said, where else can I get, not running for office again, made that commitment. My wife made sure I did, and we're going to get involved, and I got very involved in the Nashville Chamber. We have a business down there, so honored to be here. And this makes a lot of sense. I had the opportunity as well as Garrett, who is not here. We also want to thank a few of our sponsors. We have a number of sponsors, have to say that, because it's pretty expensive to put all this information, to do all the research there. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the sponsors. You can see those. We have different levels of them. But I'm going to move right into the vital signs information. Each year when this is done, they go out and they poll residents. And in this particular year, there were 750 residents polled throughout the 2 MSAs. And I'll cover in just a moment what those 2 MSAs are. About 2 million people, residents. And so they went out and did this. It's a 17-county area. So the results of this are not reflective of necessarily Franklin or Nashville or wherever it might be, but it's a combination of those 750 residents. In addition, I'm going to cover some really interesting things. I learned a lot as I went through this, and I think that you may or may not be as surprised as I was on some of the facts and the statistics. First, we're going to talk about some key statistics that illustrate the growth and the vitality of this region. I also was able to put 2 little sections in here that are specific to Williamson County, of which Franklin is in. We'll talk about that. But overall, again, as the mayor said, this is a combination of all 17 counties. There's about 2 million people living in this joint metro. It's an amazing statistic. And you think, when I left the Atlanta area, 5 million people, you think of Nashville as being smaller, and it certainly is, but 2 million people is a very sizable part, and that it really includes both the Nashville and the Clarksville MSA. That's what we're talking about in those 17 counties. Very interesting statistic. about 100, in that 2 million people, about 160,000 of those people are foreign-born residents. So the thought that we're not a diverse community, you can't say that. 160,000 of that 2 million were born in other countries. Also, the aging population, I'm 61 now, and 1 out of every 8 residents is 65 or older than 65. So it's becoming an aging economy. Very important, it represents about a $135 billion economy. If you take that 17 areas, $135 billion economy, larger than some countries' economy. Middle Tennesseans, the good news is they're earning more money. Income has grown by about 11.5% over the last 5 years. There's still some disparities, though, in that prosperity. African Americans have grown less than half that rate at about 4.9%. Still, as a region, our residents are overwhelmingly positive about all their results, all their personal financial future. Matter of fact, a full 82% of the 750 respondents believe that their personal finances are headed in the right direction, which is very, very positive. A challenge with that is going to be affordable housing, as everybody knows, whether it's in Franklin or downtown Nashville or whatever community is. And residents must earn the equivalent of about $37,000 a year minimum to qualify for housing when you use the formula that only 30% of your income can go towards housing, which is about $17.63 an hour. So that's the minimum wage for someone to, in this, again, these 2 MSAs, to be able to afford the median rent. The median home sales price is now $285,000. Of course, that number swings wildly as you go across the respective counties, but $285,000. So we found there's really 2 ways to tackle housing affordability. And that's, one is to increase the supply of housing, and you hear that going on all the time. You know, we have to need more homes, more affordable homes. And the second, and it gets very controversial, but that's the expansion of the transit service across the region. And of course, you know what's going on in Davidson County and Nashville with the presentation of the transit referendum on May 1st. Our region continues to experience growing traffic congestion. You know, I've heard people hear a little commentary here about how bad traffic is here, and having moved here from Atlanta and making a 38-mile commute to the capital, I can tell you it might be bad for a very small piece, but it's not near what other cities are. And one of the things that you're experiencing is all this growth in population. To other people, traffic's not bad here. If you've been here a long time, you think it is, but there's a lot of people that move here that think traffic is not bad. It's really not. So there's a real education that needs to go out there. But in the last year, the last 5 years, there's been 111,000 additional commuters on the road each day. In 2017, 78% of the region thought that more traffic was worse. And in 2016, that's up from 62%. So people are saying traffic is getting worse. It's getting worse, and it certainly is. In Williamson County specifically, nearly 81,000 workers commute into Williamson County from outside the county every day. 81,000 commuters come in each day into the county. 55,000 leave the county each day for work outside the county. So you've got a lot of that traffic or people that are living in different counties going to their place of work. Mean travel time to work for Williamson County residents is about 28 minutes. So they're saying most residents, the average is about 28 minutes to get to work. I happen to live in Franklin. It takes me probably 16 to 18 minutes. I consider it great compared to what I had in Atlanta. So it's all relative. Education, as you said. Obviously, education is very key to high-skilled jobs, high-skilled labor, very, very, and it all starts with quality K-12 education. Within this region, nearly 3/4 or 75% of the region residents say the quality of education is a key factor in where they choose to live. A little more than 2/3 of the residents with children are satisfied with their local school district. Okay, about 2/3, 67%. Interesting here, this is where Williamson County, again, really stands out in a very positive way, ranging from 54% in Davidson County, and Williamson County is a full 85%. So what that says is 85% of the respondents that have children in the public school system are basically satisfied with that. So it's the highest within the region. Within Williamson County also, 62.7%, 63% of Williamson County residents over 25 have an associate's degree or higher. So not only do they expect a great education, quality education for their children, but it starts with many of them have 67% have some type of degree, compared to 41% in the overall region. So as you can see, a full 20% higher in this region have an associate's degree or higher. And then graduation rates, just phenomenal. Williamson County Schools this last year had 94.6% graduation rate, whereas the state graduation rate is about 89%. So from an education standpoint, we know that on all these things, there's always room for improvements, but overall doing very well. Then we move into adult education. Obviously, you've heard of the Drive to 55 initiative and why it's so important to get those two-year degree minimum. We're making progress, but we have a long way to go, trying to get it by 2025. In 2010, 36% of the residents had at least a two-year degree, and it's increased to 40.5%, so in 2015. So the number is going up. One way to increase the graduation rate is through our community colleges. Community colleges are really, in my estimation, both in what I experienced in Georgia as well as here, they're really a gem. They provide a great opportunity for especially adults that want to go back to college to get those degrees. Across the state, only 24% of the community college students graduate in 3 years. Only 24% after 3 years. And only 36% graduate within 6 years. So there's a huge opportunity there to increase the education of those students. They're an incredible asset to our communities. We think we need to do some things differently. An example would be the Middle Tennessee Reconnect community. There's 2,300 adults presently registered in that. And these are students that are returning to college to finish their degree, and they're being supported by advisors, Reconnect ambassadors, helping them to navigate the system most successfully. And then finally, our cost of health and wellness. Again, as a person that feeling this as I get older, you know, the health of our region's residents is very, very key, and it's a major part of what we did research on. The national opioid epidemic is certainly being felt here in Middle Tennessee. I've said this every time I've made this presentation, but Dr. Bill Frist did a presentation recently, and he talked about the opioid, and he said last year there were more deaths related, 1 year, related to opioid overdose than there were in the entire Vietnam conflict. That's a staggering thing. The other thing that he stated was that today, 1/3 of all Medicaid cases are based on opioid addiction. So it is an epidemic that is ravishing this country, and it's just really amazing. It says 55% of Middle Tennesseans are concerned about someone they know who is addicted to alcohol or drugs. 42% of the region's residents, so take 42% of this community here, know someone who is struggling with addiction to prescription painkillers. In addition to personal consequences of poor health, there's also a cost to the regional economy. Our employers lose an estimated $500 million, that's within this group, $500 million a year to lost productivity due to absenteeism and a new term called presenteeism. Presenteeism means you show up for work, but you're really not present. You have other things that are affecting you, and you're just not productive while you're there. And those are associated with diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. So $500 million in those areas. Fully half of that is obesity, due to obesity. The good news is that 90% of the workers that were surveyed in this in the region believe that their employer is interested in them being healthier. So it means they're working for companies that have that appreciation. There's a clear leadership opportunity for employers to play. There's a number of examples. Last year, Barge Wagner, we gave examples of what they're doing. Our company, we've done things where we only have, out of a 17,000 square foot office space, we only have 2 trash cans. We don't have trash cans at the desk. So everything about getting getting workers up and moving around. And there's just a lot of things that companies can do to incentivize their employees to get up and move around and be more healthy. That's a very brief version on some of the high points, some of it related to Williamson County. And I know we have a time frame here. I'm happy to answer any kind of questions, or Michelle can gather any questions that you may have that we can answer. Again, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Got any questions or comments? Ann?
You answered my question was how many people in Williamson County had the 2-year degree or higher, because that wasn't in the presentation originally. I appreciate your
Yep. Thank you.
remarking on that.
And the number commuting in and out of Williamson.
That's right. That was,
That's different when we know.
That was 80-something thousand,
81.
81,000
That's
out.
total.
total
1,000
into
versus
Davidson,
35.
right?
Total day,
Let me read it to you
Yeah.
so
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't
Okay.
misstate.
I like
Um,
that.
Here it is. Nearly 81,000 workers commute into Williamson County from outside the county each day.
Williamson or Davidson?
Into Williamson County.
Okay.
that's amazing.
And
And then 55,000 Williamson County residents,
how many?
55,000 Williamson County residents travel outside the county for work each
That
day.
makes more sense.
That's a big gap.
So you have more people
Coming in,
coming into the county than you do leaving the county.
yeah,
And
because we thought it was about
Even.
even at the time.
Well,
Well,
the things that we see are Davidson to Williamson.
Yeah.
We've never
Davidson
seen
and
this
Williamson. It's a
comparison
Good point.
and all
Good
other.
point.
Right.
So those are great numbers. If you could share with us
Yeah.
those
Different.
Williamson statistics separately,
Sure.
that would be great.
Would be great.
Because I don't know that we can keep up with all of them as far as writing them down, but that'd be nice to have
Yeah.
for a board.
That'd
If
be
you can
good.
share those.
You'll
Yeah,
take care of it.
like
but you've got 130,000 plus commuting every day,
Crossing county lines.
crossing
Crossing
county lines.
And they may be going beyond or coming from beyond Davidson County. I know that's the one that you think about the most.
Any other comments?
And you were saying this covers 17 counties?
17 counties, 2 MSAs. It's the Nashville MSA as well as the Clarksville MSA.
Oh, Clarksville, okay. Yeah.
They are contiguous
What
areas.
is MSA?
Multiple,
I'm sorry?
multiple.
MSA?
Right.
What is
that?
MSA?
Metropolitan Statistical Area.
Okay, it helps when you spell it out.
Sorry.
Some of us don't know what that means.
It's all right.
That's very good information.
I had to think about it, but I got it.
And that
Very
gets,
good.
it gets
Yeah.
Fort Campbell also,
Right.
Yeah.
and Hopkinsville.
No, not-
Doesn't go to Hopkinsville?
But just
That would be
Clarks,
up there.
just Clarks.
Okay.
No, I don't think.
Well,
That's too
I'm
far.
just,
See the
I'm
map
just looking.
right there.
Those or not, is it
Your
in there?
map is,
They may pick up a few.
yeah,
Okay.
Oh, I
we
see.
verify
It does
that
look like
and
it.
Put that on the,
You're right.
It looks
may
like
be-
it on
may
the
be.
map.
on the
she'll
map.
verify whatever it includes
Yeah.
and send
It
that in
is.
correspondence to you.
Okay.
Nice piece.
Well, we appreciate y'all coming tonight.
Thank you.
Taking
Done.
time, and was there one more
And yet, we
question?
are access to health services, I was trying to read that, is that, because we have a lot of little small counties, that's part of this, correct? And are they coming into the bigger area for health services, or they stayed in their area for health services?
We didn't ask those
That comes from
specific
some-
questions, but I can look for that as well.
Because I know several counties are, losing their hospitals for whatever reasons. So that is making them more of a commute for small town individuals to seek health care. They have to go to the next.
That's a national problem
Right.
too.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is happening
Yeah.
elsewhere.
More doctors
Yeah.
are going out now to the
Need
counties.
more practitioners. Thank you very much, very nice. Thank you.
Does the staff, would the staff be interested in having some of these, because Michelle can get more down? Ellie,
Or you send it to us electronically?
Yes.
if you can send it electronically. Okay, we're ready for number 2. Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Right.
We're ready for number 2, which is consideration of including provisions of city addressing manual that would allow developers of new subdivisions the option of naming new streets after City of Franklin veterans who died in the line of duty. And I think Bev and
Yep.
Eric,
We have,
Do you want to, go ahead.
yeah, we have Navy Captain Steve Aarons and Commander of the VF Post here, Ron Ellis.
Ted Ellis.
Or Ted, I'm sorry, Ted. Ted Ellis. And we have been working on this, and I think what we're going to do right now, if we'll just, before we introduce the program, to show the video first. And that way, we'll be able to
Over in
talk
South
about
Bay, it's a
it.
bittersweet weekend for Chula Vista families whose loved ones paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Our attendance reporter Amanda Brandeis shows us how the city is ensuring their memories are forever ingrained in their community.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed. I know the pain in your heart can never go away, but at least you can rest assured that your children, your daughters, will never be forgotten here in the city of Chula Vista, never.
Behind each photo is a family filled with pride.
Charles is deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
He said that he is going to fight for our freedom, for that of my children and for my family, and he was very honored to be serving our country.
Her brother, Sergeant Charles Wyckoff, just 28, sacrificed his life to save his platoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, my tribute
And his city is making sure his memory lives on, naming a street after him along with several other selfless men.
I'm proud to be his sister. I'm sad as a human to not have my brother.
It's been nearly 10 years since the Wyckoffs had more than a photo to hold.
Is when he had first passed.
Alina Perez says sacrificing himself for his men was just the kind of guy he was, and she misses her only brother.
His smile, his laughter, it's very infectious. I just miss calling him when I have anything to say that I need to share with him. It's a fraction of a second where I know that I can't call him.
It's hard. You know, I see the American flag and it always brings a tear to my eye. Just knowing that my son died for our country. He's a very brave man.
I'm hoping that the people that live on that street will go and find his story and see what an honor it is to live on Wyckoff Street.
In Chula Vista, Amanda Brandeis, 10 News.
Council member John McCann, an Iraq War veteran and Navy reservist, championed this project. The signs will go up in a new neighborhood on the east side of the city.
I had the privilege of us serving on the City of Chula Vista's Veterans Commission beginning back in the mid-90s, back when development was occurring. The economy had not tanked quite yet, and suggested to the mayor and the city council at that time to get the developers involved in naming new streets in the vicinity of a new state veterans home that was built in, or being built in the city of Chula Vista. Since that time, we've now in the city of Chula Vista named 92 new streets in honor of killed in action citizens from the city of Chula Vista. Chula Vista is one of 18 cities in San Diego County. The program spread to all 18 cities. It is also being considered in other states. Unlike the previous speaker who moved here from Georgia, I moved from California, and I'm thrilled to be here in Franklin. And what I would like to do is suggest, and I've been working with my alderman, Bev Berger, in Ward 3, to see if we can get the city of Franklin to adopt this same program. I've worked with the Williamson County Veteran Service Office to get names. We've got lots of names eligible for this type of program, and I certainly hope as a citizen here in Franklin that the city council and the mayor and the staff will consider doing this. I've attended one of the first Wednesday at 7 o'clock meetings with the developers. All the feedback that Alderman Berger and I got were very, very positive. Working with the staff, Lori and others, Vernon, all very, very supportive. Alderman Berger and I can answer any questions you might have about the program.
And Lori, you might have something you want to say too.
The addressing manual will have to be updated
that's about it.
So we've, as Mr. Aaron said, this has been reviewed with staff, had a discussion with design professionals to also get some feedback. It's all been well received. This would involve an update of the addressing manual, which actually, I believe, runs through the planning commission, but ultimately would come to the board as a municipal code update. I think that's right.
The municipal code, yes, in front of BOMA. The addressing manual, we just update it and give it to Linnea.
Okay. So if you're comfortable, we'll proceed with developing that, and that would come back as a code update at some point. But, you know, we wanted to share this with you before we do more staff work, so we can get some feedback and proceed from there.
And this would only be for new development,
Right.
new streets that are being named as new development comes online.
And they will have to go through the same process of being approved through us and through the county as well.
Right.
That way there's not a
For
duplication.
similar names or
Yeah,
emergency
Exactly.
departments, they check all of that.
Right.
So it would still, as you said, Laura, go through all the same channels that
Yes.
normally
Yes.
a name would go through.
Yes. And we'll be doing some pamphlets to give out to the developers too as well.
Alderman Barnhill.
The caption says City of Franklin Veterans, but you mentioned Williamson County. Is it Williamson County veterans, or is it all?
The list that I received is I'm told it was the city of Franklin, but I got it from the county veteran service office.
Is it all, was the list just Franklin veterans who have?
I have not seen the list, so
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I'd like to
Right.
add, the way we researched it out in California, I started a program with, it happened to be history teachers who were military veterans themselves, and a lot of the school children were sons and daughters of active duty military, mostly Marines and Navy in San Diego, but got the high school teenagers involved in researching these names. So it became a history project for that semester for those children. And the teenagers were just thrilled with this program. I will also add that the city's added the biographies to the city website, so any potential home buyer, realtor, or whatever wants to research the name of that particular street, all they do is tap on the city's website and the information's there. I would suggest that we try to work that out with, you know, a high school here in Franklin to do the same thing, to get the young people involved.
Can you talk about the signs that were done into
The actual signs, all the television networks in San Diego covered this event. This was just before Memorial Day this year. But the signs are unique signs. They're different than the other city street signs. They're patriotic, red, white, and blue. It clearly states on which war, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, or Iraq, Afghanistan, war veteran. And there's a patriotic American flag on each of the street signs. I'm led to believe that developers, I guess, create their own street signs here in the city of Franklin. I would hope that this body could suggest to a developer that they adopt some sort of a patriotic street sign so those streets stand out as different than Mac Hatcher Parkway or something like that.
So in other words, they would be consistent throughout the city. And developers would
That's what we have done out
adhere
in
to that
California.
for a consistency on the sign, right, okay. We've worked that out as well.
Great, thanks for bringing that. We'll look forward to something coming
On
forward.
behalf of the VFW, the veterans, military families here in our community, thank you very much for being receptive to this idea, and I think it'll be great for the heritage of our city.
Appreciate the
Thank you for your
VFW being
service.
Thank you very
supportive
much.
as well,
Thank
yes.
Yeah, unlike some of the other speakers, I'm a 43-year resident of Franklin and Williamson County, and proud member of Ward 2. We would hope that the board and mayor and or the mayor, board, and aldermen would look favorably upon this request. We think it'll do a lot to help veteran issues in this area, and we would encourage you to look favorably upon this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you, Steve, sure.
Okay, we got a few event permits to talk about. Number 3 is Eat the Street. Number 4 is Main Street Brew Fest on March the 17th. And so any questions about those? If not, we'll move on to 5, which is a liquor license renewal for Red Dog Wine and Spirit Is any question about that one? If not, we'll move on to item 6, which is consideration of ordinance 2016-25, an ordinance to amend the City of Franklin Municipal Code to create a new Title 25 Parks and add a new Chapter 4 in order to establish requirements for parkland impact fees and parkland dedication of Independence Day, comprehensive fees, penalties, to add a new Chapter 25 Parks in order to establish fees for parkland impact fees and parkland dedication. And can we consider number 7 at the same time?
They really move together. And this is a follow-up from our last meeting. We had some presentation and discussion, but time was a little tight, so we wanted to bring it back for a little more discussion. Plus, we've had some additional discussion ourselves that we want to highlight some potential policy areas where we want some guidance on that. So I'll let, we have Vernon, Lisa, and Jim with us to answer questions and take you through that as well. So go ahead. Take it away, Vernon.
Eric. And since last time when we spoke, we had the opportunity to meet separately with Alderman Speedy and Alderman Peterson, and in the memorandum I outlined, gave us the opportunity to bring Alderman Speedy up on the history of how we got to where we are today, and I hope you appreciated that, and he shared some questions that I believe we were able to answer adequately for him. We also met with Alderman Peterson and talked about several items that she had pointed out, and after this evening our goal would be to take the comments we received from you and the guidance, and then spend the next couple weeks to try to get back at the second meeting in January with the revisions to the draft ordinance you have. One of the things that we want to do that we included in the memorandum is provide clarification that that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will have the final say when they review a development agreement for any type of parkland improvements that are going to be considered and recommended to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. It's very similar to any road impact fee agreement and any sanitary sewer and water impact agreement. I also failed to mention last time that this isn't a new impact fee. In 2008, when we adopted the new zoning ordinance, we had a parkland dedication section in there, but it hasn't been effective. It's been somewhat burdensome to administer by staff, and we believe that it'll be much more effective to have all the impact fee ordinance aligned in our municipal code and administered similarly. It'll also provide more transparency, we believe, because all the development impact fee ordinance will be in the municipal code. So we'll be offering some clarification to ensure that the language is very clear that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, through the development agreements, will have the final approval authority. Two things that we needed your direction on this evening pertain to the use of the existing funds that we have collected to date, really from 2008 to this point in time. The first fees we collected were in 2013 under the current ordinance. And to date, we've collected close to $6 million. And we also have another $2 million or so pending. So in all, a little bit over $8 million we'll have collected under the current ordinance. And in discussions with Alderman Peterson and our team, we wanted guidance on if the Board of Mayor and Aldermen wanted to utilize those funds similarly as we have proposed with the new ordinance. Essentially what that means is 25% of that money would go towards community parks citywide, and the other 75% discussion, if I may, Mayor, with that, and then we can ask the second piece of that.
Alderman Barnhill.
Well,
you may want to.
I will.
You may want to cover all the aspects before you.
I was going to do that secondly. The second of two questions is the proposed ordinance has a provision that we must allocate those funds within 10 years of receiving them. In discussions with Alderman Peterson, she suggested we have a discussion on should we put a time limit on those $8 million funds to staff looked at that a little bit more critically. We believe that while funds
comment on this, your options are wide open in terms of what you want to do with these dollars that have been collected under the existing ordinance, okay? It does not, you have a choice here in terms of how you do that. To you, how you apply the standards that have come out of this updated ordinance to the previous dollars that were collected. One of the things Vernon and I had a little discussion about is you may want to look at, there's two primary conditions, how you allocate them in terms of the dollars and the timing expenditure. I think I would personally recommend that putting both those conditions on those dollars that have been collected under the old ordinance maybe make it a little more difficult. You may want to choose which one of those two elements make the most sense to you in terms of if you want to put some conditions or some guidance on those dollars. I think that would be okay. But you know, it would be a 10-year period from the time it's collected, so it's not, you know, most of that money wasn't collected till 2013 or so. So you've got a little time related on that, but you know, it's really up to you how you want to handle that. You don't need to feel limited to what's in the proposed ordinance. If you want to apply those conditions at all, I think we would, from a staff perspective, recommend that having both those conditions on the money previously collected or previously in the pipeline might be a little more challenging in terms of getting things out and done.
Okay.
The comments that I would make on that, several. Number one, I see no reason to tie up the potential $8.some million under the ordinance, which is more restrictive in how you can spend it. That I would not do. And as far as the time frame is concerned, I don't have a need for a time frame. I have a need to spend when it's needed. Push to spend it in a certain time frame. So therefore, I don't need the time frame either. Let me make just a suggestion. If we are worried about spending $8.35 million, let's pull the parks items out of the CIP separate and just list them and say like we do in the CIP now, where we had $70 million or whatever it was the last time that we did that. Well, parks, some of those things never got a fair shot under $70 million because we were eating that up. But $25 million in a road and another $25 million in a road, and you got two roads, and you've eaten the parameters with which we were given, $70 million. That was our supposed to be in debt so much, and that was the parameters that we were given. Let's just look at parks separate. If you got $8.35 million. I can spend $8.535 on one project, and that's the park on the east side of I-65 that we've discussed.
We've already identified that. $13 million is in your capital plan for that project.
But that in itself probably will not do what we're wanting to do, even there. So we've got items that we can spend that money on, and I would suggest that we just prioritize it as we've done the rest of the capital spending drives and pull that separate out of there separate.
It certainly is a source we try to tag to those projects that are eligible. This guidance will help us do that as we look at other projects and other opportunities.
But parks, you know, and I don't think you would have any problem coming up with $8.35 million of expenditure.
I think we just want to make sure that we're consistent with whatever process is chosen
if you want to do this differently, then
Well,
what the new would come in.
I accept your all due respect, and I think we
Thank
ought to
you.
be consistent, yes.
However, the money that we did take came from a specific quadrant. What you have on the screen right now, and even though you may not have it in front of you, is exactly where the 8.3 million, where development, that money came from. So you can kind of see if you, when we refer to this quadrant map, is where we refer to where either we received the money, and most likely we would try to allocate it back because that's where the development took place. It doesn't mean you have to, but you would at least where the development we received the money from, you would try to put some of that money back. I'm to it.
If we do this going forward, that is what's going to happen.
Yes.
But all I'm saying is, if you back up, I don't see a reason to back up and then try to go out and figure out where the 8.35 come and which quadrant it came out of and which project. I don't, and I look at things differently. I don't have a particular quadrant that I favor one over the other. Some may, and I guess, and I'm not picking on any ward versus at large. Because this ward may have something.
me.
I'm not picking on anyone, but some of us look at it a little differently, and I think that what you've got is there may be a project someplace that would consume a vast majority or a vast part of that $8.35 million. And right now, you don't have to tie that, and you don't have to restrict it. Now, I'm not going to enter into my philosophical differences with the part impact fee offsets and all of that, which I don't totally agree with. But there's no reason to put 8.35 and put the restrictions on it that you're asking to put on it.
Thank you.
Make life easy, with all due respect.
Alderman Berger, I think you had a comment or a question.
I was just trying to understand that, so the 8 million is what's in the pipeline already? Correct.
6 has already been collected.
6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it 6 or 5?
It's 6. We've collected a little over 5 million.
5 and 3 is in the pipeline.
So you're saying, what I'm hearing is we don't want to tie that up into the new ordinance, correct? That is, it's a question you want.
We're looking for your guidance.
Yeah.
To what extent do you want to apply that framework, which is
To
two
that.
elements, the division between the quadrants, 25% citywide,
Yeah.
and then the quadrant allocation for the lines, 75%. That's one condition we're putting in the new, proposing in the new ordinance. The other piece
Funds of the timeline. I'm not hearing a pro and con of the
Where did
timeline.
10 years come from
Yeah.
anyway?
Oh,
That's what's been proposed in the ordinance, because there needs to be a time at which if you collected it and not used it, that you took payment from developers and you didn't do anything with it. We want to
Which
show
is
we're
not.
using it. And so that's the time frame we provided for ourselves to have sort of an
Accountability,
accountability that we're
yeah.
going to use it.
Sure.
And we felt 10 years was a reasonable balance in terms of timing to get things done, and also that you might accumulate enough dollars over a significant period of time to do a meaningful project. So it's really it's an accountability measure, and something we felt was appropriate, and the guideline from the consultant and looking at some of the case law, I think, told us that was an appropriate
Yeah.
piece to put in there.
I think you have to have accountability to the people that you're taking the funds from, but is there some legalities here that we're?
Apparently.
Shauna has
With
come
all
up here, I'd
due
like to know
respect.
what.
While y'all are deciding, let me make a quick point, which I think Clyde has made a really good point, is that we're talking about 25, 75 potentially on the money we've already collected or going to collect. The problem is, I think as a board, we don't really know what those projects might be. I think
right.
his suggestion to pull out those parks capital projects and look at them and let us kind of prioritize and see what happens and what that formula might be.
We will want to qualify. We've done that to some extent already. Okay, we've already made some, strategically assigned some of those dollars already. So I don't disagree that's a good idea to do, but we have already identified some
Do we know
towards
what
some
they are?
project. Well, the Southeast Park, I think, has some some dollars already in there. We also took the acquisition of Robinson Lake and the property around that, we allocated $1.5 million, I think.
The park has part of the $8.35 million in it.
We talked about using
Yes.
yes, like a 25%. That's where that can be used for.
You've
community.
allocated some of those funds to projects already.
Yeah.
That
So
project in
use the
particular.
25% there.
And then that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
It
It's
would
a-
be either way.
Yes.
I just don't want you to think you have all 8 to program when we've already really earmarked some of it already.
So how much do you have?
We don't.
I think it'd be 8.3 less $1.5 million. We talked about for that property acquisition.
6.5.
Associated.
But it could use all of it, couldn't it?
Oh, sure.
It could-
Yeah, you can.
Okay,
have
and that's the only point that I'm making, is that
Yeah.
Yep.
you didn't have to, you got 8.3. If you want to do that on that project, do it on.
And the other question is there ever be an opportunity or time where we would have a problem that we allocate 25% to any park in the city, and yet 75, would you say 70%?
75%.
75% is 25 to 75. Okay, 75% in that district, in that quad, but would there ever be an opportunity where we wouldn't have the need, where we'd have the need in 3 other quads, and the quad that gets it doesn't need it as badly, so then what do? Are you stuck legally with that?
You have to have a nexus.
Yeah.
And that's the law.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether or not this ordinance, when you approve this ordinance and it goes into effect, the money we already have still has to be used in a nexus manner. So if you have 8.3 and you collected it all in one, you still can't use it in quadrant 3.
By law.
By law.
Plus, if you had the development in that quadrant
Yeah,
that generated that money, it would stand to reason
Do
that you
something
have
with
that
that.
need.
Right.
You have a need because new development has come in and there's new residents and there's unmet needs from a park facility standpoint. So I don't think we
so.
would run into
We wouldn't
that
run into-
scenario much, plus there's the
I wouldn't
legal
think,
framework
just
that we have to be
asking.
mindful of.
And this law, this case that we're talking about, it occurred in 2013. So we knew we were under those regulations since 2013.
Right.
So this isn't really a question.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I haven't seen where the monies come from in which quadrants, but it will have to be used and some sort of nexus to where it was collected.
But the amounts or the percentage is ours to choose, correct, or not?
Well,
75, 25, or not?
We're having an academic conversation.
no, we're actually having a legal conversation
Yeah.
because of like 3 cases.
Well, I
that have gone
understand
to
that,
the
but
US
the
Supreme
answer
Court.
has, that's the answer.
Is that the answer?
So is the 10-year off the
Then
table?
we don't need to
have
ask
do
them
it
at
in
that
10
if
years?
it needs to be allocated.
Seems like to me
it
we
has
have
to be allocated with the nexus in mind. And
The old money does?
yeah,
Okay.
because we knew about
Then
it.
we
The
don't need
case
to ask
happened in
them that.
2013.
Next.
Right.
Roll on.
How
Well,
about the
there,
10 years?
that's the answer.
Now, the 10 years, I do think that you have to have some sort of accountability, but the
That
10
ain't
years
gonna
is created by you. You could have less than 10 years, more than 10 years, or you could have an annual report. That's totally up to you how you do that.
10 years or more.
And the 25, 75, is that set in stone, or is that our?
That is
our
not law
price?
either. It has to be a nexus, and I think the reason we have to,
It is a law?
no,
Did you
no.
say?
It has to, the money you collect has to be used in some sort of close proximity to the development that provides the money.
But
the
we
impact.
have the legal right to take 25% and use it throughout the
The
city.
That's our
reason
best
we're
guess.
picking, the reason we pick the 25, and it's not for every park. Remember, there are certain parks that are not included, and the reason we picked those particular parks and left out the others was because chances are in a neighborhood, if you're gonna play baseball, if you're in quadrant 3 and you're gonna play baseball, no matter where you live in the city, you're probably gonna go to Jim Warren. If you're playing football, you might end up at another park, but chances are in the neighborhood, you're using other parks in other quadrants. So 25% sounded like a very defensible number when you think about the people in the neighborhood and other parks that they'd be using that are
Sure.
football, baseball, those kind of specialties.
Sure.
So we're passing an ordinance that we already are governed under. It's just 2013. Is that what
Well,
you're
we're
saying?
not governed under it. No, we're not governed under it.
But
It
you just got through saying that we don't have.
Now, the money that we have, we know we need to fix it. We know that we have money, and we know we have to spend it within a certain.
That's never been a problem with a
That's true.
politician.
Well, wait.
But that's why we haven't spent it. Right, that's why we haven't.
That we've already gotten.
Because we wanted to make sure we're following the rules.
And we've been going through this process, so we've been a little cautious about
That's been
allocating
3
it,
years,
so we
right?
could
3 years we've had that?
do this, yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while.
Did we collect that money from the
Well-
quadrant that, where the park is? With the
Well, I don't know.
southeast?
That's what this will show you.
It'll
First of
show
all,
you.
25% of all of it goes to community parks.
I'm not
The
talking
Southeast Park,
I'm not talking about.
the Southeast Park
70%.
is a community park.
Okay, I'm talking about
Southeast Park is a
75%.
community park.
Okay.
So it's part of the 25%.
I understand.
But isn't Margaret asking where
So-
that's been collected from?
I wanna know where,
Quadrant 2.
you
For
said
the
it all came
southeast.
from the same quadrant.
No, where you see,
No,
this
no,
map right here that
See
you
the map? You see the little red
Yeah.
numbers?
there are small
This is
numbers.
2.
Everywhere there's a number, that's where we've collected money from that particular
Quadrant 2 is
development.
over here.
So you have quad,
Wait a minute, I got about 3 people talking. I'm recognizing Lisa, so everybody else.
Thank
If you got a question, we'll take it as soon as we get done. Go ahead.
sure. So your upper left quadrant is quadrant 4. To the right of that is quadrant 1. Below quadrant 1 to the bottom right is quadrant 2, which is where the Southeast Park is located. And then quadrant 3 is in the bottom left. Quadrant 3, as you can see, is is the least amount of development has taken place over the last few years. But you can see where the dispersion is. And we have development that has taken place in all quadrants. So there's not one quadrant that has been left out. However, you see where there's more in
Quadrant
certain
one's got
ones.
2 million, I just counted. Off of
What-
2 projects.
Right. I'm not speaking about money. I'm just speaking about where the
No, quadrant.
particular development has taken place. But you're correct, Alderman Peterson.
Resource and Artesa.
Okay, where are we now?
So, I think we really want guidance on the 10 years, because what I'm hearing from our council is we need to be careful about the nexus issue, so we need to stick with the 25 to community and the 75 in the quadrant.
Yeah.
So I apologize if we weren't clear
Well,
on
the
that.
same thing applies to the 10 years, because if you don't use it, then there's a question about whether or not you should have collected it in the first place.
I think it's a judgment call about what year you want, what
I
time
don't
frame
think,
you
I
want to
mean,
pick.
there's no reason not to impose a 10-year rule on ourselves. It makes it more defensible from a challenge, and we're never going to have that problem,
No.
ever.
Yeah.
We're never gonna refund money because we held it for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's likely true. Our only challenge is we have dollars we may have collected in 13 that in this process, we've sort of held off allocating it, so we've got a shorter time frame than 10 years from now. It's more like.
Good news, Mr. Administrator.
Go spend money.
Go spend the money.
Yeah. I appreciate that guidance.
There's
Well,
one
that's
thing,
true.
though, on the City of Franklin Parks Department CIP projects, 2017 through 2026, that's 10 years, there is 0 neighborhood parks in here, not one. And so if this thing is going to be for neighborhood parks, because if you read it, it says basically the 25% going to the, community park, and basically the 75% going to neighborhood parks, we haven't planned for any of them yet. We need to do that right away.
And this is a little, the way this is written is to be more prospective with new development to encourage and facilitate the development of neighborhood parks as that occurs. And the plan is built more around what exists now around the neighborhoods, which is you've got the
Well,
amenities
what are
that have been
what are
built.
greenways in our path system?
Well,
They are
see,
considered, they would be
New
considered
parks.
part of a park facility. They could
Well,
be.
but
eligible.
neighborhood or?
yes.
Yes.
Okay,
They could be
well
considered
then,
that.
great.
But I wanna say something about that.
Go ahead, Alderman.
To-
I'm talking to you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Uh,
You want to say something? I'm going to say,
Yeah,
go ahead.
thank you very much.
I'm giving you permission.
Whenever we were talking about neighborhood parks, even when we got the park plan, that we did, the city of Franklin basically has, well, I guess now maybe they have 3 neighborhood parks in the entire city. The county has 2 neighborhood parks inside the city. To me, though, a neighborhood park is for a family. If you're talking about linear trails, you're really talking about adults. You are not talking about children using linear trails.
I beg to differ.
Well, I'm just saying though, you know, to me, a neighborhood park means playground and other things like that. And it should be close enough so that a lot of people could use them. So I did have a problem with thinking about if you're saying the 75% has got to be for, as neighborhood parks, because there's some places in here where it says shall, but maybe that was just one of the explanations given to me. But it's, you know, but I want us to think about that. Are we talking about our parks being what we have now, the historic parks, all the stuff like that, and some community parks where we have the sports and everything, and then really we're not. I want to see us do things for families and for children, and let me tell you, if we're talking about obesity, that is not just for adults needing to do something about that. Children absolutely need to, and you know, I've said so many times, but and it's really not much of an exaggeration, we have virtually no new, even single-family lots that are being approved that have enough room for a swing set in the backyard. I mean, and that has been true for years in this city. And so we really need to do something about that. So I do want to, I want to see this being kind of explicit on some things. I think we're talking about some of those tonight, you know, but there are just a lot of things where, you know, it's just like the thing where I was thinking, well, neighborhood parks, great, 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 and everything, and then I you know, found out that it meant also the trails and everything like that. And to me, that wasn't what I was thinking. But there are a lot of things in here that are just not, I want to say, not specific enough. And one of the other things, you know, that they did talk with me, and I really appreciate, you know, getting together, and we had some good discussion. I think that. And there were some agreements on some things, and then some others we talked about, you know, having the entire board look at. But there are a lot of broad points, you know, that really need further discussions. I think I've said one of the things about should be for entire families. But I mean, there's a thing like 50% of the perimeter of a park must abut public streets. Mm-hmm. We have, as far as I can tell, maybe one park that's on a corner where 50% of the perimeter might be, and there is definitely not another one in the city that follows that. And also the generic neighborhood park that we have here. Where is there a park like this? You know, it has the picture of the basketball court and everything, but, you know, have we been shown built examples of neighborhood parks that Franklin wants to have here? You know, we have visited other places, and I don't know, I've only been to a couple of the times on the trips, but were there any specifically to look at neighborhood parks? Because even our park study said that is one of our glaring weaknesses in the park system that we have now. And as I say, you know, I'd like to see what we're talking about for some good examples of what we might want to do. I mean, I can understand a generic, you know, example, but I mean, I want to see some where we think that they would fit Franklin, and there are probably some around Middle Tennessee. I don't know. I don't think we have to go to, you know, wherever we went to for those other places, but we need to look at that, and on some others, and on one last specific thing. There are some things in here that kind of, and we talked a little bit about this whenever I met with you, that sounds like the DRT, you know, with planning, maybe makes a decision, or the Parks Department makes a decision. And if you're talking about, first of all, allocating money or taking money in, I mean, taking things in lieu of, that has to come to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, no question about that. But the thing is, whenever we are deciding, like, you know, on the CIP, whenever we have we put in our priorities and everything, we need to see some things that are projected that we can say need to be the priorities, I think there.
And what we had clarified when we talked that we need to do in the ordinance is we need to clarify that the development agreement's approved by the BOMA first, and then the process for getting the site plan approved for the particular park facility would be, if it's less than 5 acres, would be one thing. If it's more than 5 acres, it's another. But ultimately, the authority of approving the development agreement, how those funds are allocated, would be by BOMA first. That, and I think we just need to reorganize where it is in the ordinance.
Yeah, it really, it does need, it's some clarifications,
Yes.
I would say, on some things. But to finally, the last thing, I guess, maybe that I stop from on this, what we have had is parkland dedication. That's what is in the zoning ordinance. This becomes an impact fee. And that is really different from what we have at this present time.
Right.
Even though it was changed several times there.
Okay, any other comments? Or any other directions to staff to what to bring back on this issue?
What are they gonna bring back?
That's what I'm asking.
What are you gonna bring back?
Well, hopefully at the second meeting in January, we're gonna provide that clarification that talked about staff's recommendations regarding the use of those funds that relate to a development agreement that ultimately gets approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Based on the discussion this evening, again, I apologize too for lacking the clarity. 75 to 25, 75% will be incorporated regarding the existing funds, and so will the 10 years based on the discussion that we've had to spend the money in that time. And then we'll bring that back on, if it's okay with you, on the voting meeting on the second meeting in January.
Alderman Martin.
Didn't we just get through working with the school system to use their playgrounds for parks for?
And that would be another element of how you might develop and allocate some neighborhood park dollars. That's a potential.
They spoke on it last night, actually. They approved.
So that's
They approved
yeah,
it
so
last
that's another
No.
outlet.
Okay.
And I think as a complement to all this, as we move forward and looking at capital investment programming, we'll provide you with a little more of a segregation of those eligible dollars with some projects and help you see maybe how we can more directly allocate and support some parks projects with these dollars that are specifically earmarked for these types of uses. So
Correct.
hopefully that'll help.
And Alderman Peters did bring up within the current CIP, but we would like to bring forth some smaller projects, as you've mentioned. A perfect example that we've included that we've been working internally on is the FEMA properties that we host. We've talked about turning some of those properties into neighborhood parks. Well, we've only started that by working with Leadership Franklin to do some of those small projects. But we'd like to then, you could really turn those things in, but we have not set aside money to purchase land inside neighborhoods. So that is correct. However, should that be the desire and you want to look at that, you could use some of that money toward it. But we would add to a list in order, especially because we have to connect it to these quadrants. So we would add to a CIP off of this.
Alderman Barnhill.
One final comment. I would not try to jam this up into a 15-minute presentation on the 12th of January or whenever it is. That's number one. Number two, and this is, and I even somewhat hesitate to even say this, I would extend an invitation to every alderman, the same invitation that you extended to whomever, because I think this is important. And I don't think it necessarily is a one alderman meeting with you guys, or if you guys were one alderman. If you're gonna do the meeting, let's have the meeting. I mean, unless there's a reason, I'll be there, you know, and I think.
Do you want another work session going through the nuts and bolts of this thing again, or not?
That's my preference, yes, but that's.
Because we've gone through this from the ground up a couple
I know you
different
have,
times, so we're glad to do it.
But I will say this to you, what Shauna said a while ago, I believe is totally different from anything that has been said so far, that we're now and have been governed by basically four quadrants since 2013. Is that not?
Well, no, that's
No,
what we
not the
developed in
quadrants.
doing this ordinance to
Right.
respond to what came out of that, court ruling.
So when the
Okay.
lawsuit happened and the Supreme Court ruled, we knew that we had to make sure that the money we were collecting would be spent somewhere close to the development that we got the money from. So we knew about the nexus, we were trying to fix it. And so what you have is the ordinance that we're presenting to you that we think accurately shows a nexus between the development and the park and the improvements. So we believe we have fixed it. Now, the law doesn't say 75-25. That's something that we came up with because Franklin has a different way of doing its parks, and we have some parks that people all over the city go to regardless of where you live, and that's different than some other cities. So that's why we feel comfortable with the 75-25.
And that's the parts that we see the vast majority of, okay? No.
So we're glad to, if you'd like more of a broader briefing on the whole thing for the whole board, we can come back and
That's
do
up
that
to-
for you.
That's up to the rest of the
Okay.
members of the board.
I'm also interested in the projects that you all
Yeah,
were thinking about and where. So to go back, I think the basic understanding there, we got a legal obligation, that's bottom line. So, but where do we wanna, what are we thinking? Where do we wanna put these parks?
That may be more
And
of a capital investment
Yeah.
discussion than to get wrapped up in this
Right.
ordinance about what projects you want to fund.
It may be, but I still want to see if you've got $1.2 million in
Yeah.
quadrant one and $1.8 million in quadrant
We can
three.
certainly show you that.
What projects can you apply to those in the specific quadrant that will spend that money legally and satisfy the quadrant, satisfy the 10 years, satisfy the state, the Supreme Court, satisfy the developer, and marginally satisfy the ratepayer.
All right, we got,
Is there any interest in finding out about some other examples of neighborhood parks?
Why don't
Yes.
I think might be helpful, and I appreciate you saying that, is that's what development and the new developments in these areas have started. Why don't we bring examples that you would give credit to, that would use this ordinance to be able
Good
to
idea.
show you?
Good idea.
And,
I like that.
and we'll bring those in because they're already doing that. That's the goal, is that they would continue to and they would receive credit for. And so I think if we can show those things, you'll see those neighborhood parks. You'll see those pools that would receive only a certain amount of credit, but you would also see some trails and playgrounds that is serving those areas. And so we've got some great new examples in our city. Let's bring that back.
That'd be good.
One final comment. Vernon said that any offsets are approved by the board, and that's true on any impact fees or anything else. If they follow all of the rules and everything, there's not much reason to turn them down. So basically, if they followed every rule that we've done, same thing on road impact fees or anything else, it's sort of just a blessing that we bless this particular impact fee offset.
Well, there is a provision in there that talks about if we've done a major capital project within a quadrant or something, that you can say that, no, the parkland impact fee has to be paid rather than.
Okay.
There is a provision in there
That's
about
different.
that.
That's different from a road impact fee or, okay, that's all right.
all right,
Could-
I'm ready to move forward
Okay.
because we've got.
I just want to
some-
say, road impact fees, though, a lot of people use the roads that would not necessarily be used in park.
gonna-
And the last thing I want to say is, I did meet with our attorney also. Thank you. I was talking about the others, but I appreciate that.
All right, we're going to item 8. I want to be out of here by quarter till, and we've got quite a bit of discussion maybe on the parking capacity studies. So let's go to item 8 is Amendment 5 to the Professional Services Agreement with Smith Seckman Reed for water treatment plant modifications project, an amount not to exceed $93,750.
This item had come up in our Capital Investment Committee meeting at the end of November. And the committee had asked us to explore a little more fully what our options might be in place of extending this contractual agreement. We did provide you, updated the memo to provide those options, which would be, there's 2 additional options beyond continuing this relationship. One would be to assign that to city staff, and it would need to be one of our senior staff members, and it would really require their full-time attention to take that on. And then the second option would be to bring in another consultant that would need to familiarize themselves with the design, with the project, to take on that that representative role for the balance of the project. In both those cases, we would see some real shortfalls in terms of confusion, in terms of cost and potential delay. And with that in mind, would recommend we go with the original recommendation to provide this professional services agreement amendment and move forward with Smith Seckman Reed fulfilling that role. They're the designer, the engineer of record on the project. They've been serving in this project for about 3 years or so, and we're really at the stretch run here the last 3 months of the project in terms of when we will bring it online, and the commissioning and the last elements related to the project. Having that continuity, we believe, would be very important, and this would be the most cost-effective way to do that. But we're glad to discuss those options further, or how we got to that reaffirmation, I guess I'd say, of the recommendation. And this is on your voting
It's on the voting
meeting as
session.
well.
Any questions, comments? Not, we'll move on to item 9, consideration procurement award to Franklin Disposal LLC of Franklin in an amount of $3.25 per container per day for the purchase of servicing of public refuse collection containers located in downtown Franklin for a term of service for the Sanitation Environmental Services Department.
This is a service we provide now largely through the weekends, and is a byproduct of just how busy downtown is and needing to provide that more frequent service. It has worked well over the last year to have an outside vendor help us with that. This provides the opportunity to extend that service over more days, and so we'd like to pursue that and recommend moving forward here as well.
Any questions, comments?
Excuse me, a couple things to highlight, pardon me?
Clean up the trash.
Yes, sir. Clean up the trash. So yes, we are blessed with a great deal of tourism here in Franklin. I want to make the distinction between the services that we are currently have versus the services we are requesting to be approved tonight. Currently, we have this service performed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so 3 days a week. We were requesting to move towards a 7-day-a-week service. Right now, we have tourism throughout the week, and we want to make sure that it remains a clean place. Also, you know, with the addition of new homes to our city, our sanitation environmental services crews work very diligently and hard to make sure that they can service all the containers. We spoke about that during the budget process. We would like to keep them moving towards their core services and allow for a contractor to perform this. So the difference in cost is about $22,000 for the 3-day-a-week service and about $52,000 for the 7-day-a-week service. The other thing that I'd like to highlight as well is this was overlooked during the budget process. So I wanted to point that out. It is in the memo. We do believe that the Sanitation Environmental Services budget can accommodate it. Saying that, though, we will come back to you with a budget amendment to kind of clean up the oversight that we had during the budget process earlier. And that, of course, would reflect what you all would approve this evening.
Were both the 22,000 and the 55 both overlooked?
The
Either
entire
one.
service,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
Okay.
To go back a
Even
little
though
further,
we're accommodating the existing
right.
year, so.
This was actually a mid-year transition last year. They went out to bid late fall of 2016. They did a budget amendment at that time, and it just fell through the cracks. So I won't have an excuse for you for that one, but we will
But
work to
there
clean
is
that
some
up.
cost offset, and this is something we believe we can absorb pretty readily. And there's a benefit to providing this service in this way, so.
What about the really special days when you really need to empty those more than once? How does that gonna work?
I think in those instances, our staff would
Okay.
go out and work those, so, yes.
Because there are some times when,
I have seen
And we
it
do
myself,
keep
yes.
an eye on that as well.
Okay, any other questions, comments? We'll go to item 10, which is the recommendation from the downtown parking capacity and management study. This is continued discussion.
So this is one we discussed last meeting, wanted a little more time on it, but also our purpose tonight is to really, there's a lot in this study.
yes.
We gave you a ton, and some of it has shorter term implications, some of them are very long-term, longer policy discussions, more review that we may need to do. So what we would like to do tonight is sort of break some major topics into sort of short-term or more immediate issues, medium-term, long-term, so that we're not necessarily looking for you to make decisions tonight, but to sort of guide our work about what we might bring back to you in the next few months, what we might bring back to you in a longer-term review, what other information you might need to help assist you in making some of these decisions. We understand it's a pretty overwhelming study with lots of content and also some pretty significant potential policy issues to look at. So what we wanted to do is maybe talk through this framework and what that might mean. We also, in reviewing this, have recognized that our existing parking ordinance is out of date. It needs to be updated in terms of how we function, and some of that gets wrapped up in some of the more short-term items. But there are things we're going to need to address even to just respond to how it works now, and what people's expectations are. But so this is really to help put a framework that'll help us guide through there, answer questions you may still have, but also see if this makes sense to you in terms of what we continue to bring forward and look at specific issues and try to break this down a little more.
Okay, so with me is John with Walker Parking Consultants and Brad from Volkert to help answer questions, and so we can walk you through that overview. The first is we tried to think what is the immediate quick wins that we can do to really implement and start making some improvements, and essentially it's updating, looking at municipal code Title 15 and doing basically a total update of it. Some key things are looking at the 4-hour parking where it's located in the downtown, where it should be located, and trying to reduce that to 2 hours for on-street parking only. The other thing we should do is evaluate our current fee structure associated with parking violations, and again, there's a lot of different little things that need to be updated within that. It's very outdated, and so that would be an immediate thing that we would recommend proceeding with. Also, the pedestrian improvements that were recommended at 4th Avenue South, it's a very simple thing. And then the pavement marking upgrades on all the downtown city streets is something that we could work with our street department to try to improve signage and striping in the downtown and designate where parking is appropriate and inappropriate on our downtown core streets. Looking into the short-term recommendations, short-term we should really look to try to acquire land only, not do any construction unless the board decides otherwise, but to acquire land really in the northeast or southeast area of the downtown to try to accommodate future public service. You could also look for public-private partnerships and accomplish that same goal. We'd also start further evaluation of some type of phasing option or phasing to start metering parking on-street and off-street as a short-term recommendation. And really that would come with significant more amount of evaluation and additional study to see how you appropriately phase that without having major impacts on, say, churches and other businesses in the downtown area. The midterm recommendations would be look to find some type of parking garage through public-private partnership or public investment near Columbia Avenue, also at 5th Avenue North and Main Street. And we'd also look to start to try to move forward with the construction of some of these surface parking lots Now, depending on metered parking, you may want to push the construction of those surface parking lots up in the priority. But again, we would continue to reevaluate these and look for your direction on how to prioritize those. And then long-term recommendation would be to continue to evaluate, you know, the benefits associated with having a parking authority and how that can benefit the city long-term. And so we really tried to simplify it in this one-page memo, and we certainly look forward to hearing your feedback on how you would like to proceed with some of these.
While y'all are thinking, I'm going to actually invite someone to come up and speak. Terry Gordon is a citizen, and she wanted to speak to this item. I think she's from St. Philip's Church. Oh, you can sit down with us. Yeah, we're casual in this one. Just use the microphone. Terry Gordon.
Thank you. I'm a member at St. Philip's Catholic Church, and I would like the opportunity to address you all while you're looking at these plans and proposals and recommendations for this parking study, and to keep in mind the churches that are in the downtown area that utilize these garages and on-street parking on Sundays especially. We do not have dedicated parking at our church, and I know we are not the only ones in the downtown area. There are many beautiful historic churches that dot our landscape here in Franklin, and we utilize these garages and this on-street parking for our members. And we would hate to see where you have to pay to come worship downtown Franklin on Sundays. So that's what, as you all consider this, we'd like to keep that in mind. Maybe a longer window on Sundays, so enforcement doesn't start till 1 o'clock in the afternoon or noon or something of that nature, or 4-hour free parking. For many of those who do come downtown to these churches that don't have their own parking lots, we're here for Sunday school, we're here for worship service, so we're not here 1 hour, we're here a lot longer on Sundays. There are Wednesday night services, there's a lot of different things, and so we understand festivals, we understand these special events that have downtown Franklin. You know, we're proud to be down here in this historic city, and we understand the need for parking and for a parking study that's been done. But we would be asking for some accommodations, and I'm speaking for us, but I think the other churches in town, I know there are other churches that don't have their own parking lots. For maybe some drop-off spaces, zones where we could drop off elderly or disabled members for church. Maybe a reduced rate of some sort, or a voucher so that the church could purchase, so that we could utilize that for volunteers or members that might have difficulty in paying for parking. So those are some considerations. We have elderly members who don't have a smartphone, so if this is going to be an app on their smartphone, I don't know how they're going to pay for their parking. Please keep us in mind, and those are some considerations that we just thought we'd like to bring to your attention while you're looking at these proposals and recommendations.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, y'all have had time to think. Questions and comments? Alderman Martin.
I don't think we ought to have any charges on Sunday.
That's certainly, I'm glad she spoke tonight. Is it okay if I go ahead, Paul? Okay. That's been a topic of continual discussion amongst our steering committee and others. I mean, we recognize that that is one of the challenges with Sunday parking. You've got a multitude of options there. You know, I know John and I have talked about in many cities, they don't charge for parking on Sundays at all. You also have the option to, if you do charge for parking, that you can, you know, work with those institutions that are interested in that, work with them in terms of developing some type of arrangement there. Or you could extend the amount of time on Sunday that there is no paid parking. Maybe you have it for certain times of the day, but maybe not during Sunday morning period. So yeah, you've got a multitude of options there for sure.
Alderman Berger.
And going along with that, if you go to a lot of similar cities, such as Franklin, with tourists and people coming to visit and vibrant downtowns, I was just down in Savannah recently, and at 5 o'clock, in certain areas of downtown, there's no fee. the parking meters are, it says after 5 o'clock, no charge. Because the restaurants are trying to bring in people to the restaurants, so they do away with the fees after that. Some even do away with the fees all weekend, on Saturdays and Sundays. Could be reasonable to charge on a Saturday, but maybe we don't want to do that either, but I'm with Margaret. I'm not interested in seeing any fees charged on any Sunday whatsoever. And then, if you catch the after 5 group, that also gives, help to the churches on Wednesday nights. So you're not catching the people going to church on Wednesday nights, which is an active night. But any night, the church may have Cub Scouts, they may have groups of kids doing different things at different times at their churches, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursdays sometimes. And I think after 5 o'clock, this board really needs to consider, do we want to be charging after 5 o'clock?
Just one thing that I thought of whenever it said, you know, the 1 hour or maybe 2 hours and then you're paying everything. What about the meetings that we have?
Yep.
Especially the budget committee meetings. I mean, you know, I mean, really.
That's for on-street parking only.
I'm just saying, though, if you better put a lot more
Charge the
places, a lot more places in the garage.
And then the people that come to the meetings. You've got maybe 100 people coming to a meeting some night.
Oh, that's right. I hadn't thought about that.
Look
I
at
was-
7 o'clock, I'm sure it'll be full at 7.
Uh-huh.
And so, I think that's why a lot of cities do say after 5 o'clock, they're not
Yeah.
charging.
Yeah.
Because there's activities, there's meetings, there's restaurants, there's all sorts of things going on, and they're just, they're not doing that.
Alderman Bransford?
Well, my comment is mostly around the short-term recommendation related to the surface parking lot land acquisition. How are we thinking, how will that be pursued? I mean, we are looking to purchase, we're looking to spend.
We would
we're
look for
looking to-
opportunities. We
Well-
wouldn't necessarily want to talk about specific ones right now, but we would look for where there might be some opportunities to put,
Okay, because
put that in
land-
place. Yeah.
And they had some places named, not in this thing, but in some of the other, you know, like down there on Margin. There are some places that, I don't know who owns them now, but they're places that
Also the
people
Hill
could.
property, right?
Yeah, we would just look for whatever
HG
opportunities are out there and bring them forward as we identify those.
And
And the HG Hill,
HG Hill.
there could be redevelopment there at some point that
Right.
could involve
The
some
HG Hill
structured
property.
parking and that kind of thing. That could be a public-private partnership opportunity.
And short-term, what are we thinking? Year, 18 months?
What is short-term?
Yeah.
Good question.
But what is our short-term, once we move forward with this?
But I would say that we would look for your guidance on that, but if we found an opportunity, certainly we'd bring it forward.
Right.
And we could
Quicker.
prioritize it through the CIP process as well.
Yeah.
You know, I would think that trying to identify these surface parking lots is really critical before you ever even think about going to meter parking, because that's where a lot of your employees are gonna go park.
Yes.
They're not, or the people that need to stay for an extended period of time, and there's probably sidewalk improvements that need to be made, and that all needs to be looked at, well thought out and phased. But the acquisition of land and trying to secure that's important moving forward,
Right.
if there's an opportunity.
And weren't we talking
Prioritizing
about
that
kind of a
because you'll
little
be
shuttle
competing.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a
Yeah.
shuttle if we have the parking out in some of those areas.
Yeah, you definitely will be competing with other people regarding land, available land, so that's what I'm saying, that's what is short-term, because before we know it, someone else is
Quicker
getting.
the better.
We
Yeah.
developing
That's
those
right.
properties, yes.
Where are we with the technology installation at our garages to
Thank you.
indicate?
Appreciate you saying that.
Soon.
Because we talked
We've
about that
got
a long time
cameras
ago.
in place. Actually, the
Thank you.
security cameras that we have can assist us. We're adding a few cameras
Great.
to help us with other areas, but we're gonna be able to tell people that their space is available, and when they enter the parking garage, they'll be able to know what level
Oh, that's
and
great.
what number of spaces will be
Great.
available. So, we actually, using some of the existing resources with the cameras, we think we'll be able to do both garages for the cost we had anticipated just doing Fourth Avenue. So, I give our IT crew and facilities crew credit for that, coming up with a good solution there. But we're working on that, and hopefully, early next year, you'll have that in place. And we've worked through the signage with historic zoning, so I think we've got a pretty good path forward on that.
Because the other day, whenever we were having either the tree lighting or, I mean, there were people
Jam-packed.
coming,
Yeah.
you know, there were more people coming down from having gone all the way to the top and not found a place, so you couldn't really move, you know, because of that. So thank you for that.
I'd like to reiterate something that Paul mentioned. I think it's very important that, you know, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about this, and it's not as a big a deal as what some of the other issues are, but it really is a big deal, and that is the point that Paul made about, you know, with the surface lots and looking for locations to put those. And Paul mentioned, and I just want to reiterate, is the importance of the safety aspect of that too, because you've got people now who are used to who potentially used to parking close by where they work, now potentially would be looking at walking a couple of blocks further away. So the safety aspect there is important in terms of not only the pedestrian facilities, but also proper lighting along the route, proper lighting for the actual parking lot itself. So that's really important point you brought up, Paul, that I think, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's a very important one to bring up.
And one other thing, if we're talking about the surface parking that I looked at, you know, based on this, a lot of those are in the floodplain, and we need to think about how we do that, because, you know, the thing that everybody said was going to work was the pervious pavement, and apparently now, whenever there's a flood, mud gets in them totally, and so that's really not the best thing to do. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how we could work with that, because the surface parking lots look like the quickest thing that we could do, you know.
Yeah, there are definitely other options than pervious
Okay.
paving, so we'll come up with something.
Just let us know about that, because, you know, for a long time, we thought that was absolutely the thing to do. Now, whenever you were talking about, you know, I looked for Fifth Avenue and Main.
Yeah, this is really, if you look at the parking study, Brad can jump in, that's where you saw a lot of capacity issues with available parking spaces, and that's, go ahead, you can.
Yeah, when we were out looking and doing the data collection, and John was part of that, actually driving around, so he can tell you too. But that area right there around Starbucks, as we all know, is a hot spot for parking. And of course, you've got the garage over on 4th. But that particular location there is an activity hub, as we know it, and there's actually that surface lot behind the Starbucks there, and now it has parking. That is a potential excellent location for a future garage as well. Not going to, but I think it can certainly be. And with regard to, you know, one of the things we've talked about is things that will seriously be considered as part of that is the opportunity to this part of your downtown. So, but we think it's workable.
Alderman Martin.
Also, keep in mind the residents downtown that are not, they have no access to their fronts anymore. And I the survey that was done in the Methodist parking lot over here, the Generation Church. There are only 16 places that are paid, and so I don't know where it's coming from, but those students and the people that work in the church and in that area are parking on the street and filling up places, and they're parking in front of the fire plugs, and they're parking in the driveways, and all that. So it's a mess.
And before we started this, and that's why one of the first things Paul had us work on that striping, because that will greatly influence and control that from terms of actually having dedicated marked parking spaces, so that you're not blocking people's ways. And then on the tail end of that, which then becomes the enforcement. it's easier for the enforcement people if they see the marked parking space to be able to go out and do the enforcement.
And you mentioned somewhere in this permitted places for residents.
Yeah, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be
yeah,
great.
Okay, yeah. So the idea behind that is, once we introduce paid parking, if I shouldn't say once we do, sorry, if that's done, if that is kind of further walks out and they're staring at cars all day, every day, or they're having their driveways blocked and those types of things. So one of the options that you have, and this would, again, this is just an option, is to do some type of residential permit program, where as a group, some street, if you will, residences can come to the city, or if you implement a parking, go to the parking authority and work with them on a permit system where you potentially have to have a permit to park on street in those locations. Or you.
What happens if you don't have a permit?
Then you get enforced. Yeah. So it's kind of a way to help that encroachment, for people who live out there.
Because we don't have much enforcement right now.
Yeah.
Okay, you got one more comment?
Yeah, we have some nice pictures of that.
Yes, yes, I'm sure you do. Hey,
yeah,
you could do it every day, couldn't
Yeah,
you?
absolutely, any day of the week. But yeah, that's an area where we looked at with the striping plan, making some changes so that you're not last blocking